Arteta! What a strike! What a screamer! Zola! And a fantastic goal! Arsenal back in it! And here's Limpar, lines it up, finds the net. Arsenal in front.
Podcast episode comes too soon. We swear it's never happened before, but we're assured it's totally normal and won't affect the enjoyment. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot Smith, and you can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. That's right, we've come too soon. Sometimes you just get really excited, and you have to put out that podcast, and you just can't make it till the right time. So, we're recording before the Östersunds game because, frankly, did anybody even know what was happening? Maybe not. So here's what we're going to do instead. We're going to talk about it briefly, just so we can acknowledge its existence. We will talk about the cup final coming up this weekend. We will talk about Hector Bellerin slandering the Arsenal Fan TV people and how shocked and appalled we are by that. And then do a little bit of sort of season summary stuff that should be fun. I think you'll like it. We're going to give out some awards that, hopefully the players will have presented to them in person now that we know how keen they are to keep up with fan-created content. In any event, Tim is here. You can find him on Twitter at Stilberto. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
Clive's here. He's on Twitter at ClivePAFC. Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, hi. Good. Great. I have been told that I talk very fast on this podcast. Now, I want to make one thing clear. I listen to podcasts at 1.5 speed. Highly recommend it. I think it's made me feel that normal talking speed is too slow. So, what can I say? It is what it is. That's where we're at. So, let's start with the Östersunds game, which will be probably kicking off maybe right around the time people are listening to this, or will have already happened by the time people listen to this, so we don't have to spend a lot of time on it. Tim, I imagine you'll be there. What's your sense of going to this game? I mean, do you almost feel like this is a preseason friendly in terms of what you expect to see in intensity, lineup, and things like that?
Yeah, a little bit, but I think pretty much all of the Europa League games have been like that, to be honest. I think this competition, I've said this before, has been, up to this point, a massive disappointment in terms of entertainment and excitement. Hopefully, assuming that we get through this, it might pick up a little bit from the kind of last 16 onwards, and I do kind of expect it to. And to be honest, over the years, when I've watched the Europa League kind of casually, from the last 8 onwards, it tends to be quite an exciting competition because there are any number of teams that can win it. And a lot of it as well kind of depends on how teams are doing in their domestic leagues. Like the Champions League's the Champions League. Everyone goes for that. Particularly in the knockouts, nobody sacks that off. But with the Europa League, there's this kind of interesting dynamic where sometimes how much teams go for it is governed by their circumstances in the league. So if they're, in a title race or something, a bit like we saw with Napoli last week, Napoli basically played their reserves at Leipzig, not interested in this at all. They're in the Serie A race. They've only got eyes for that, so they're going to kick themselves out.
It's a little bit like the FA Cup in the 3rd and 4th round.
Yeah. And a lot of kind of South American continental competitions go like this. You get these interesting dynamics where if teams are out of the league title race, they really throw all their resources into a cup, or vice versa. If they're winning the league, they will pick the reserves in the cup. And so you get these interesting dynamics. But, for a start off, it does feel like it's going to be a bit of a dead game. But also, I really feel like quite strongly like there shouldn't be a game in the build-up to a cup final. During the week in the build-up to a cup final, this game kind of feels like it's in the way. I always feel like a cup final should have like a clean, at least 1 week build-up towards it to kind of help build that excitement and tension. And I keep thinking about Sunday and then going, oh yeah, but there's this on Thursday. It feels kind of like a diversion when you're on listeners in London will be very familiar with this. When you're on a bus or something, or when you get on a train and there's a kind of a rail replacement bus and you think, oh yeah, I've got to get on that and it's going to make the journey. That's kind of what this game feels like. It feels like a rail replacement bus in the build up to, another trip to Wembley, another cup final. And really what could, be our high point of the season on Sunday if we win it. that we could be looking at that as the best day of our season. And yeah, this Östersunds game kind of just feels like it's in the way, to be honest.
Yeah, I do. Just quickly, do you expect that this could be among the lowest attendances you've seen at the Emirates? We've had a few, but this could be right up there.
Yeah, this really could rival the Borisov home game. I'm not sure it'll be quite that low, but yeah, I think less than half full.
Yeah. Clive, so then I guess the question is how to approach this. We are 3-0 to the good with 3 away goals. They would have to score 4 to win it outright without extra time. They're not doing that. I mean, they weren't good enough at home to really challenge us, and we could debate that, but not needed. So other than Mkhitaryan, who the manager has said will play, and I think I support that because ultimately he's a guy who can't play in the cup final and probably needs minutes to just kind of get back to his full sharpness. Would you play any first-team players?
Not many. I can't think of any I want to see out there. I think it's just all I'm thinking about is which young players are going to play.
Well, you want to throw a lineup out there for me? I mean, give me your hypothetical.
Okay, just off my top of my head, right? So I would go Ospina. I would actually go Maitland-Niles at right back. I would go Holding Chambers. I would go Kolasinac. I would then go Elneny. I would go Willock. And then I would go... I probably would play Jack for a bit.
Really?
I just feel... Yeah, I just feel he was ill. He hasn't played any minutes. The only game versus Spurs when he didn't really do fantastically well was fighting. That's the first time I've seen him look a little bit jaded, and I wonder if it was illness. He didn't play the next game, so I would try to get some minutes into Jack. I think when he's mobile, he feels better and he looks better. I think so. I would definitely try and get some minutes into him. I would go Mkhitaryan. I would go Welbeck.
Nelson and Kedia.
Welbeck,
really? Okay.
I'll go Welbeck again. I want to see him get more minutes, and I would go Nelson as the other star.
So you wouldn't start in Kedia then?
No, not this time.
Okay.
But I would just, share the game with Welbeck, right? Welbeck for 1 hour and Kedia for the last 30 minutes.
Yeah. Is Welbeck fit and healthy and all that stuff?
Yep.
And never know. Okay, so yeah, I mean, maybe it does make sense. I guess the argument you could make is with Lacazette out, and Giroud, I don't think he's fit, so I don't think he can play. And Walcott, I don't think he's fit, so I don't think he can play either. And Alexis hasn't been fit for a while. So given that situation, don't you kind of have to maybe just protect Welbeck, given that outside of Aubameyang, he is literally like the only other senior forward we have at the club heading into a cup final at the weekend? And given Welbeck's likelihood to pull this or that or pop this or strain that?
Yeah, I think we gotta play him into form a little bit. I think
fair enough. Yeah.
We gotta give him a chance. Away game on the plastic pitch may not. He took a bit of stick for that last game, although I wasn't too worried about it. We got the result, and he was finding his feet. Another hour would be great, even if it's 55 minutes. That would be fine.
Yeah.
And then share the game, right? So yeah, I hope he does that. And the more minutes Welbeck gets, the better. The more likely he's going to get up to speed and start moving and start to look more sort of vivacious and start to charge around. And that's a player that we can all accept. We can accept that maybe when he's playing like that, when he's really energetic and really proactive, we sort of forgive the fact that he can't find the net, or we don't know when he's going to find the net. So he'll miss the easy chance and scuff the difficult one. So, but at the moment, he's not even working hard that much. He's not looking harder working than anybody else. So we want to get his legs back. And so I would play him for an hour at least.
Fair enough. I sometimes wonder with these games that have nothing riding on them that when you play first-team players, they actually kind of half-ass it, and that's when you can pull muscles and strain things. And you know what I mean? And look, I am not a professional athlete anymore. Those days are behind me. Ever since I retired. Yeah, but I mean, I know that when I'm, exercising, working out, playing a sport, and I'm not really fully focused on it, sometimes that's when I plant weird or twist something or something gives way. Now, to be fair, that could also just be the effects of being Methuselah. But like, that would be my only worry, is that you want players who are really going to be fully engaged in this match because they'll get more out of it than a player who maybe thinks they're above it, if that makes any sense.
It makes a lot of sense, but what I would counter that with is when you're at home and there's an expectant home crowd, you sort of have to focus. I think it's sometimes harder away from home when it's there's only a couple of thousand of your own fans and it's a very poor opposition. You can sort of sneak through a game, but at home you can't do that. You've got a responsibility to lift the crowd or lift the red seats that are going to be staring at you come the night.
Yeah, you need to lift those seats. I mean, if ever there was a time that the seats needed to be lifted, it would definitely be this game. 0 to 10, Clive, where 0 is like the Emirates Cup or whatever we call that thing, and 10 is Bayern Munich in the round of 16 in the Champions League. How worried are you that we might screw this up tomorrow?
Hey, mate, I'm about a 4.
Real? What? I'm a 0, and you know me, and I'm a 0. There's no possible chance.
I'm a 4.
Wow.
But I'm an Arsenal fan. You have to see the first 5 minutes.
Could they go 2-0 up? They could. I mean, they absolutely could because we're Arsenal. But, like, there's no chance.
I'm just a 4. But after 5 minutes, that'll go down.
Okay, Tim, how about you? 0 to 10?
1.
Okay.
Maybe.
Good enough. That's the Östersunds match. We hope you enjoyed the preview. Okay. Tim, there's a cup final on Sunday. When we play it, for players like Aubameyang, for example, it will have been his first game in 15 days. It comes in this weird period that we have not played our first team together since the Spurs game. I mean, is there any, look, I think rest can be fantastic, maybe not as fantastic when you're integrating new pieces. How concerned are you, or do you think it's a benefit, I guess it could be either the other, about this weird gap that has formed between the last time the first team all played together and this cup final?
Yeah, I am a little bit, actually. I don't think it's quite ideal. I think again, maybe if we didn't have this second leg in the way, it would I don't know, it'd feel like 9 days, 10 days rest without another game in the way, and you just think, well, we haven't had another game, so we just train and whatnot. But
it's 15 days, isn't it? I mean, we didn't really play a full first team. Well, I guess we did play a lot of the first team at Östersund.
But and those players that didn't play in Östersunds, the likes of Xhaka, I think Clive's right about Wilshere. I wonder if he'll get kind of half an hour tomorrow, or maybe even an hour. I suppose that would depend on what Ramsey's fitness is like, but then Ramsey won't have played for 3 weeks, even if we do get him to start. And, Ramsey, like Wilshere, is a player who really relies on rhythm. Yeah,
Paul makes that point a lot. When he's playing a lot, that's when you get the best out of him,
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a little bit concerned about that, to be quite honest. I think particularly, for the first 10 minutes of a game, what we really, really don't want on Sunday is to be cold for that first 10 minutes because, City will either just tear us apart and score, or they'll just establish a pattern of the game very, very quickly. So it's really important that we're switched on from the first minute. I mean, go back and watch the FA Cup final from last year again. From the absolute first minute, Arsenal were absolutely on it. I mean, I think we scored in the 4th or 5th, but even before that, we perhaps, I'm not saying we expected to score in the first 5 minutes, but we imposed ourselves straight away on the game. And I think even if we can't do that, what's really important is that we don't let Manchester City do that. So, I am a little bit concerned about that. Particularly, I think, give it 10, 15 minutes and everyone will get into it. But, in 10, 15 minutes, a game can get away from you. And so I am a little bit concerned about that. And I do wonder if he'll drop a couple of guys in, maybe from the bench or so, just to give them 15, 20 minutes to keep them warm. But then I think Wenger, he said he's not really a fan of that. I can't remember when he said it. I think it was a few years ago. He said something about, bringing a guy on for 20 minutes, in terms of what our data shows us, that doesn't actually do an awful lot for a player. Mm-hmm. In fact, I think he was making the point that 15, 20, even bringing a player off 15 minutes early, generally speaking, doesn't do an awful lot for them. It's, that gap's not that significant. So, ultimately, he's just going to have to make a judgment on what he's seeing in training. But I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Jack Wilshere got 20 minutes tomorrow night just to kind of keep him warm. Xhaka, I tend to think he's played pretty much all season. He'll be.
Well, the advantage
okay,
for
I'm
Xhaka
sure.
is he doesn't actually have to move during a football match. So, you don't
Well,
need to
indeed.
keep him warm because wherever he plants his feet, he just sort of stays there. That's his spot.
And one kind of, as much as I wouldn't start Ospina on Sunday, I think a good thing is that Wenger's made that decision early, and actually Ospina will have played 2 games in advance of that. So if you're going to do it, this is probably the best circumstance to do it. He's made the decision early. He's made it public very early. He's giving him 2 games before. Again, it's not what I would do personally, but that's one kind of advantage from this rotation.
Yeah. So then, just real quick, staying with you, are you excited to see Aubameyang? I mean, it's so weird. This guy shows up. We're excited. He has a decent start to life at Arsenal, and then maybe a bit of a tough outing against Spurs. Kind of in a weird trick of the schedule. 2 of his first 3 games at Arsenal will be played at Wembley. But then he goes 15 days where we haven't seen him, and it's been so exciting that he arrived, and now you almost forget it. I mean, you expect him to start? You excited to see him, and how do you think the manager will line up around him?
Yeah, I definitely expect him to start. Very excited to see him. I think he will be and should be absolutely chomping at the bit. I really hope they've been working, and I suppose, I know, again, they've had these kind of 2 Europa League games, but you'd like to think in the background, in training, Austen's been doing a bit of work, perhaps between him and Ozil, establishing that relationship a little bit more, and whoever else is going to play, like, I don't know, say Iwobi starts, for example. I'd like to think that Austen perhaps had both his formation and a good idea of his starting team in mind before the Östersunds first leg, and that he's, perhaps done some background work, if not with the whole 11, at least with little kind of sections of the team. And I think that, those front players, even Mkhitaryan, who, again, he's not, by quirk of the kind of fixture list, isn't going to be able to play with he's going to have like nearly a month's gap before he can play with Aubameyang again. But obviously they already have that relationship anyway from Borussia Dortmund. So I'd like to think that perhaps we've been working on things like that. So I do think he'll start, particularly because Lacazette's not available anyway. As for how we'll go around him, I really, really don't know. I think it will depend, because the big question, right, is it back 3 or back 4? I think he's going to go with the back 4 again.
That seems to be what we are now. I mean, he doesn't. Yeah, he didn't change it for Spurs after we played so well in the back 3 at home to Spurs. So why
or
now?
Chelsea.
Yep,
or Chelsea.
He's got that 4-1-4-1. Do you expect to see something more like that with Elneny sort of between the midfield and the defence?
I think so. Yeah, I think he quite likes the idea of Elneny as a kind of hybrid central defender, defensive midfielder kind of type, and particularly when you look at the kind of City players that float around a lot, and having Elneny, I do worry that with Elneny we get pushed back quite naturally, but at the same time, I tend to think that might happen anyway.
Yeah,
and
it's interesting too. Sorry, go ahead, Tim.
I was just going to say I'd kind of rather have Elneny floating around in front of our back 4 than Xhaka. Both of them are going to need to do that, but I'd rather it wasn't just Granit Xhaka on his own. I'd rather, he had at least had Elneny alongside him to try and deal with like De Bruyne and Silva.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the manager made a point to say how disappointed he was with how we missed some opportunities to counterattack against Spurs, and he clearly felt those chances were there. So it wouldn't surprise me if he sets up similarly in this game with the hope that we will just be more clinical with those counterattacking opportunities against City. So, Clive, I want you to do... I've saved the simple stuff for you today.
Cheers.
Just set the difficulty setting right down to beginner for you. And I want you to do something that honestly, a talking monkey could. But, in this case, do you think... what is the approach to beating City? Just real simple. How do we have to play to beat City? Just the basics of football. I mean, what do you got to do to beat City? Okay, I'm kidding. By the way, that was a terrible setup for a joke. But my point is, nobody seems to understand how to do this except Rochdale.
I'll give it a
whoever
go.
it was. Who just beat City? Not Rochdale. Rochdale drew Spurs, right?
City got beat by Wigan, didn't they?
Of course, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, with City, it's remember we beat Spurs. I think it was the 12-minute derby, whatever it was, or the where we scored. Sorry, the 12-second derby. We scored 2 goals really, really quickly. With Fabregas went through. I think we're going to have to hold on for the first 12 minutes. Right? That's the key thing. Got to be 0-0 at the start because they're going to react from being beaten by Wigan. For them to lose 2 cup games in a week is going to change the narrative around them. So they're going to want to really attack us. And what City do, they are very position based as a team. They hold the wide areas. They make sure they fill the pitch, and their wide men hold their position, and they run out to in, and they run on weak shoulders, right? And they've got 2 number 8s that can pass through a needle, right? So it's quite a simple thing. They sprint defensively very early. They do the old 5-second rule where they try to cut you down within 5 seconds, and they really box you in, and they put you under pressure and they push you back. And so for me, if you're going to play against them, the first thing you've got to think is, okay, when we have it, we mustn't be afraid to hold our position, because we must be sensible. We must keep wide areas. We must make them think. And one thing Arsenal can do is they can play the ball quite nicely and receive it quite nicely, but it's the movement that creates continuity of passing. So we must have the energy to defend, but when we have the ball, we must have the energy to have good support line running so we can keep the ball and keep it moving. And that's when you threaten Chelsea. City. Their number
I've got you doing it now.
their number 8s are beautiful. You see De Bruyne walking, it's like he's running downhill when he's going towards you, and he's passing. It's just incredible. You've got to get him running backwards. You've got to start stressing him, and the same for David Silva. So that's a difficult thing. It's an easy thing to say, but it's very difficult to do. To do that, you've got to be brave, and you've got to have passing options. And this is why I actually don't want a back 4. I want a back 3, because your wing backs are your outball, because they're there already and they're your outball, and then you can drive up the pitch from that
My
side.
counterpoint would be against Spurs, what he tried to do, or at least it seemed like what we tried to do, is keep Ozil and Mkhitaryan wide and use them as the outball instead of wingbacks, with the idea, I guess, being that they could then have the class and the quality to receive that ball and give it to Aubameyang on the sprint. I mean, do you think that there's some merit to that approach?
Not really, and probably they didn't. And they had their I call them interior players, Ozil and Mkhitaryan. Interior players that can go wide. I want them to be in to out, not out to in, if you see what I mean. And they were forced into areas where I thought they were ineffective, and they were tracking people. I didn't watch the Adrian Clark thing before, till just recently actually. And one thing he said, and I thought was very clever about Spurs, is that not only did they speed up in the second half, but they really compressed the pitch and made it like White Hart Lane. And I thought, we've got to go to a back 3 at Wembley. We've got to make the pitch big. Whenever we make it big, we've got a chance. Our technical passers have that extra yard to make that pass. Then you start to get people going back. A 4-3-3 looks great on paper, and we all like it. We get more people in. But we've got to think position. Can we cover the pitch? Can we stretch them?
Do you worry at all that we haven't
get killed?
Sorry, that we haven't been able to make that 3-4-3 work or 3-4-2-1 work absent Ramsey? That the Ramsey-Xhaka partnership really carried that to success, and that if Ramsey can't start on Sunday, that really makes it difficult to build a midfield that can work with that formation?
You see, a lot of people have that view. I must admit, I don't.
Well, that's because you hate Ramsey, but
I don't. I think I do see the value of what he does in pushing people back. But for me, when I think about that formation, I think about the wing backs. I think about their ability to be aggressive and to challenge people. I often think sometimes that if we go straight down the middle to Aubameyang or into Lacazette, we lack aggressive running in wide areas, and we have no wingers. We have no wingers at the club anymore, so we have to get our width from wing backs. So, and I don't trust it in a back 4, because Sane and Sterling will just rip that apart into the spaces. They're too fast. So you've got to challenge them in wide areas. And I think by having the extra centre back, by having the wingbacks higher, I think it's important. But if we get pressed, they can come back in. I remember thinking last year to semi-final, I think it was Gabriel's best game. How many strong challenges he made in that right channel against Sane. He was always on the stretch like an auxiliary fullback as a centre-back. I think a fit rested Koscielny could do that job. So can Monreal on the other side. But when we get it, we must make them work, because otherwise it's going to be a long afternoon biting your nails.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the question is, right, you look at Wigan and they sat in and took the brunt of it and they had 20% possession and they were outshot 28-4 or whatever it was, but they made their one chance count when Will Grigg ran in behind and scored, and certainly Aubameyang can do that, but I think sometimes for smaller clubs it's easier to have the mentality of sitting in. You've done it before. You have an inferiority complex, as you naturally should, and so you don't feel that you should go toe-to-toe with them. And sometimes big players at big clubs have an ego about that sort of thing. Now, in the past, we've seen Arsenal get pinned back by teams like Barcelona and turn in some good performances that way, but I still think that we are better off being a little more front-footed, a little more pressure off the ball, and not just trying to sit and take the brunt of their abuse, because they just have too many players that can pick a pass, too many players that can finish a move. Forgive me for not trusting our defense to sit for 90 minutes, but I just don't. Tim, I think now that Clive has sort of sussed out how you beat City, and obviously, like I said, simple, but
very easy.
Very easy. So two quick things here. One is what do you expect generally from the game, and then putting it into context. This is a tough one. I mean, this is a cup that doesn't particularly have a rich history recently for us. I mean, the furthest we've gotten is the final against Birmingham City, where obviously we know what happened. It was kind of a heartbreaking moment because it was supposed to be the day we broke the trophy drought, which at that time felt long and then stretched on for a little bit longer. I do struggle with this because there's a part of me that knows that if we weren't in it, I wouldn't be watching the cup final on Sunday. I'd probably pick another game to watch. So what do you expect from it, and how important is it in the context of our season and where we are as a club?
To be honest, I expect us to lose. I think City aren't completely unbeatable. I think we can worry them, certainly, and I completely agree with what you both said about we've got to strike. It's a razor thin balance between kind of respecting them and their game and what they can do, but taking ours to them as well, which it's a very, very tricky balance to strike. But we've done it before. We did it in the semi-final last year, although I think they're a significantly better team than they were then. We did it against Chelsea last year, and maybe it's a good time, to play City. They've got a few injuries. They've just lost to Wigan. They don't look like they're quite as. They're not at the height that they were in, say, October, November. I think Kevin De Bruyne had an interview the other week where he said something like, in an average season, you have 10 games where you feel good. And I think his words were, the rest you just feel like shit. I think he said something like, it takes 10 games to get into it. Then you have 10 games where you feel really good. And then for the rest of the season, you just feel like shit.
For us, I would argue with the 10 games, but sure, go ahead.
Yeah, that's ideally really how it should go as well, if you do things right. So, I'd be surprised if we won, but not absolutely like, oh my God, this is such a shock.
I mean, they are 27 points above us in the table, so it's it's not like we should expect to beat them. No. But given how we performed in the semi-final against them at Wembley last season, we've certainly proven it can be done.
Yeah, precisely. As for your second question, for me, it's super important. I love the cups. I love the League Cup. Always have, always will. I understand where modern football is, and that's absolutely fine. I understand the choices that managers have to make. That's absolutely fine. I don't have to make those choices, so I don't. It's as simple as that. So to me, it's hugely important. But, I understand that when you ask the question, what does it mean for the club and where their position is, then I have to shift back and kind of say, in terms of modern football, it doesn't. I wrote an article about this. I think like 6 of the last 8 League Cup winning managers have been sacked within 12 months of winning it. So that tells you what kind of club owners think.
Well, that's not going to happen at Arsenal. So
no, that's
don't have to worry about that. But aren't these things
it's not going to happen to either manager, actually.
Yeah, fair.
It's not going to happen to either manager, actually. But yeah, it's look. I think sometimes we worry too much about what does this all mean? Where does this put us? Because there's such a hierarchy, a really firmly entrenched hierarchy in world football now. And I was having this kind of discussion, just on a bit of a tangent today, about Mesut Ozil, and someone was saying, he gets the sniffles and quite a lot, which he does, and he doesn't always do it in big games, which I think is true. And I was kind of saying those things are true, and that's kind of why he's at Arsenal. And I kind of accept that. I accept that we have to buy some slightly broken eggs because that's where we are. And basically, if
paying $350,000 a week for broken eggs isn't necessarily the best budgeting, but I take your point.
but Ozil's our best broken egg,
of course,
as it were. And we've always had to do that to a degree, with the likes of Bergkamp and Overmars and Kanu and Henry and Vieira. They all, they were all a bit broken when we bought them. But I mean, just look. The fact is that if Ozil started, played 90 minutes of every single game every season and scored and got a hat-trick of assists in the big games, he wouldn't be our player anymore. So I'm kind of a bit relaxed about some of his flaws I use as a relative term at the elite level. And because football has become so firmly there's glass ceilings all over the place basically, and to me, that's even more of a reason to value something like a cup win or a cup final, particularly for a club like Arsenal, who are just outside that elite bracket. I think that's even more reason to just cherish a final for what it is, which is it's a really kind of nice day out. And if you win it, the feeling for a week or two is just brilliant. And then, it probably doesn't linger on much longer than that. The shelf life of a cup win, because it's a cup final, I think the feeling is more euphoric than winning the league. But it's kind of like winning the cup is like doing cocaine and winning the league is like doing ecstasy. One's a hard hit that fades quite quickly, and then the other one's a bit more a bit longer and a bit more meaningful.
The only thing I'd take issue with I'd say winning the cup is more like taking a handful of ketamine and jamming them up your ass while you're funneling a bottle of vodka with strippers. You know what? Never mind. Your analogy was fine. Your analogy was fine.
I've not tried that yet. Maybe if we went on Sunday. But do you know what I mean? A cup final win is much more euphoric, but it doesn't last as long. And that's kind of fine. I don't think we have to worry too much about what does winning the League Cup mean for Arsenal. Because, to be honest, it doesn't mean an awful lot beyond the day itself.
Yes,
and,
I get your point. Yeah.
Whatever else it means. So, it's not going to make... If we win it, people will feel great for a day or two. I don't think it's going to make anyone feel like, we've cracked the elite or anything like that. But, that's really, really hard to do. And whisper it quietly, we probably can't do it. So, fuck it. Let's just, try and enjoy it. And ultimately, if we lose... We're the underdogs. We haven't got a massive rivalry with Man City. It's not like losing to Spurs or Chelsea or something in the final. So, I'm relatively relaxed about it, prepared to enjoy it for what it is. We haven't got. It's not like the last League Cup final where I was super nervous because we were the favourites and we had this trophy drought. We don't have that trophy drought thing hanging over us. It's not life or death. So I'm hugely looking forward to it, even though I'm expecting the worst.
Yeah, very well said. And that's been Tim's Pharmaceutical Corner. So we'll return to that at some point. No, look, I think you make a great point. I am of the belief that domestic cup performances are orthogonal to club direction, if that makes sense. That you can celebrate domestic cup performances, that you can be thrilled by a cup win, that you can be thrilled by a cup final victory, that you can have the euphoria from it, and still feel that a club is headed in the wrong trajectory, that it is not achieving its goals overall. I'm sure Wigan fans would tell you that winning the FA Cup is the greatest moment of their football supporting lives or recent memory, but they subsequently suffered 2 relegations. Were they headed in the right direction when they won the FA Cup? Decidedly not. So I think that, they're orthogonal in that way, in the sense that you can, to your point, celebrate the cups, enjoy the cups, have that euphoric feeling, especially because it is a culminating moment, whereas league games, 3 points is fantastic, but it doesn't culminate in anything. But the league and Europe, to some extent, are more indicative of the direction the club is heading. And I think you can evaluate those two things independently. I learned the word orthogonal recently, so I wanted to try to use it. And I hope I used it properly. In any event, Clive, I'll give you a final word on this, and then I want to get into some tempests and teacups, because what better place to put a tempest than a teacup? Someone will have to explain to me where that came about. In any event, your thoughts on what it all means, how excited you are for it, how much you care about it, how excited you would be to win it. I mean, I think we all have to agree that the caliber of the opposition certainly matters, that if it was a League Cup final against Hull City, not that we always make that easy, we might not feel the same, but certainly beating the mighty Manchester City would give it a feeling of greater import. I mean, where do you stand on what this means for us?
Yeah, I think I'm still reading on Tim's point about Ozil, actually. I think it's so right. If Ozil was the player we all hoped he'd be, he probably wouldn't be with us. And it's like that's really, really a thoughtful point, and it makes me think about where we actually are. It really crystallises it well. But then Arsenal's always been a surprising club, and before the semi-final against Chelsea, we didn't think we had 2 professional leg performances like we showed, and I just couldn't see that coming, and they just did it. In the semi-final last year, we weren't sure what was coming. I thought we were very dashing, and we took them apart, and we hung on a little bit, but when then we slowly wore them down, and then we picked their pockets and won the game, right? And towards the end of the game, we were way stronger than them. And then Chelsea, we all know what happened against Chelsea. The trick with these games and the trick with this trophy, just to stay in it. It means something to me, I must admit. I am not one of these people that buys the hype about any team, really. I just think every team has their period. They have their moments when they're hot. A few weeks ago we were talking about Man City being invincible, and then a few weeks later they lose to Wigan Monday night on national TV. It's just the way it goes, football. It just goes in cycles, and all you have to do is look after yourself. And so I'm not buying the hype with them. I think they would be deserving champions. Let's see what happens in the other competitions. So the League Cup for me, well, funny enough, when I think of it and us winning it, I think of the manager, actually. He's won all the other domestic trophies, but he hasn't won this one. And I would like him to get it, right? So I think about him. I'd like him to get a European trophy before he leaves us as well. I think it'd be a wonderful send-off, he says, wistfully. But I would like him to get a full set of trophies, a European trophy and all domestic trophies.
Yeah, he's not getting big ears, but that's another story.
Yeah, I think he deserves it, right?
Big
Whatever
ears?
we all say about him.
He's not getting that one, right? He deserved that too, right? But he just messed up in the final. And so basically, I would like to see him get that, what he deserves, in my opinion, which is a full set of domestic trophies.
Yeah.
For 21 years plus, I think that'd be a good thing.
I mean, look, if Theo can get a toaster, you know, can't we get Arsenal a League Cup, for fuck's sake? All right, so up the Arsenal and all that crap. It's cup final on Sunday. Enjoy it. Now on to the really important stuff. Tim, how outraged were you when Hector Bellerin, in measured and thoughtful way, delivered the most benign criticism of all time to Arsenal Fan TV?
Yeah. It's really something of nothing, wasn't it? And I think what was notable was that Robbie, who Arsenal Fan TV is his and his only. It's like all his work. Well, there are a couple of guys behind the scenes as well, but like he's built this up from the ground, right? And I don't know if you saw his response to it, which was incredibly philosophical, incredibly like understanding, and he's entitled to his opinion and blah blah blah. And and it's just quite notable that he's the one who probably had, quote unquote, the most right to feel a bit put out by, as you say, some really tame comments. But the individuals who are trying to become notorious, shall we say, off the back of his product, are the ones who are most offended. And that's usually the way in life, isn't it? That the people who shout the loudest are always the first to lift their skirts over their heads when they get anything back. But I think it's well worth watching all of that Bellerin Q&A, because I think he comes across really well on so many subjects, actually. And, for a guy of 22, speaking in second, maybe even third language, I assume he's fluent in Catalan. And, for a guy who made a decision to come to England when he was 16, he was at, his hometown club like Barcelona. Must have been very difficult for him to give up, but he decided to come over. He learned the language, to the point that he speaks like a native, which is absolutely incredible for someone who learns a language that late in life. Usually, like you pick up a dialect if you learn it as a child, not as a teenager. That tells me he's got a natural flair for it, by the way, because that doesn't happen to everybody. And that tells me he's a really smart guy, and that's what I really got out of this. And he's obviously very confident and very comfortable in himself, which is a big quality. It's a big quality for an elite sportsman to have as well. I think we underestimate how much psychological pressure there is on elite sportsmen. And I saw someone, there was just someone sent a tweet that they were kind of prevaricating, saying very like all this whataboutery, like, oh, I think he said it because of this, because he's under pressure and he wants to get. And someone just responded to him and just said, you wouldn't last 2 minutes in his world. He's 22 and he's in his fourth season playing regularly in a team like Arsenal in front of 60,000 pretty demanding and fairly consistently unhappy
and where your
fans.
Psyche is regularly destroyed, like every other week or so.
Yeah, exactly. And what we've spoken a lot about the criticism of his performances this season, which I don't think any of us really quite understand,
not remotely. No.
And I think something we've all spoken about as well is his kind of personality in difficult moments. And you look at, I think we spoke about it at length in response to his kind of last-minute equaliser against Chelsea, where it's the 93rd minute, we're 2-1 down against the London rival, and he really can't. And he's not a forward, but he really calmly strokes the ball in the net from 20 yards. And it's easy to overplay these things, but I think it's easy to underplay them as well, like the pressure of that moment. And not only was he forward, was he asserting his game on the situation. He was then calm in the right moment. And that's an unbelievably difficult balance to strike between being assertive enough to go, no, I don't believe we're beaten yet, I'm getting forward. And then when that moment comes, not thrashing at it. And particularly for a young man like that. And he's just someone I look at, and every time he plays, I think, and it's not to say he does everything right. Obviously, he's still young. He still makes the odd error and stuff like that. But it's really difficult to explain, but he looks like a foot taller than he actually is. He just looks to me like someone who gets on that football pitch and is like, yeah, this is my job. This is what I've chosen. It reminds me of a quote Bob Wilson came out with in some interview or other, where Bob Wilson, he's renowned for his bravery as a goalkeeper. And he was saying, in the tunnel, I was the most nervous footballer you've ever seen. But he said as soon as, and the tunnel in his day was very, very small and cramped at Highbury. He said, as soon as I saw the pitch and I heard the fans, he said, I thought to myself, no, this is what you've chosen to do with your life. You're incredibly lucky to do it. Go out there and show that you belong here. And I really see that in Bellerin. I really see a guy whose shoulders are back, his head's up, who keeps going forward, who keeps trying to play his game. And ultimately, it's going to break my heart. This is why Pep Guardiola loves him and is going, I think, to keep on, whichever club he's at, he's going to keep on casing Bellerin, I think, because I think he sees a guy who's just who's absolutely assertive at all times about how he wants to play in all situations. And these are the guys that, you know, Guardiola really loves. And I think, unfortunately, I think that's a love affair that probably won't go away. And one day we might not have Hector Bellerin anymore. And I think we'll all see, if and when that happens, we'll all see what a special player he is and what a special kind of young man he is, because I think he's hugely impressive on and off the pitch. And, you know, I honestly think that a lot, not all, but a lot of this is just that he's grown his hair a bit long and he wears clothes that, like, quite a lot of middle-aged men get grumpy about. And I think a lot of it's like, oh, he's disappeared up his own arse and stuff. I don't see that. I just see like a confident young man who doesn't give a fuck what you think about what he wears, and more power to his elbow for that.
Yeah, and I think we as fans, and when I say we, I include myself and don't include myself. I think some are worse than others, but have a sense that you can say or do whatever you like because you're a fan, and you can do no wrong as a fan, and that that the players must respect that at all moments. And yet, Clive, here we have fans making fake audio recordings saying that it's Bellerin, supposedly having some bullshit phone conversation saying he wants out of the club or something like that, which, oh, by the way, these conversations probably happen on the phone and wouldn't change my opinion of anyone because players' contracts and employment situations are fluid. But is there a point where we have to stop? And it extends to everything. I mean, Wigan beat City and they rush onto the pitch and they get in Sergio Aguero's face and supposedly verbally abuse him and spit at him, and then everybody wants him banned for punching the guy back. I mean, is there a point at which we have to stop and say, you know what, this is big business, this is big entertainment. You wouldn't feel like you could rush the red carpet at the Oscars because you liked 3 billboards or whatever. I mean, do fans have to take a look at themselves and realize that, you know, maybe it used to be that after the game you'd go to the boozer and have a pint with your favorite player, but that's not modern football. And whether you love or hate modern football, you have to accept that your role in this is now, look, for better and worse, and certainly for better in some ways. You know, the hooliganism is mostly gone, and some of the toxic stuff around football is mostly gone, but for better or worse, you are a paying customer and you have to adhere to certain rules and responsibilities.
Yep. Well, for me, it's about 2 words, right? It's about standards and perspective. I think sometimes we hold our heroes on the pitch, we hold them to higher standards than we hold ourselves. And we need to look at that. We need to get perspective again. Just because they are paid footballers for Arsenal Football Club, it doesn't give you free right to abuse people. You have to look at your own self and how you're behaving. Have you got perspective as a football watching fan? Now, I can't make everybody follow my perspective or your perspective or Tim's perspective on football. We're 3 guys talking on a podcast in the evening. Some people think we're crazy to do that.
3 very important guys talking on a very important podcast. But yeah, okay, go ahead.
Well, some people think we're crazy to do that. Have you got perspective? This is our perspective. This is our journey, and I respect everybody's football journey. However, what I always hope for is how we treat our heroes and how we treat each other. And I think we're losing that. And some people are maybe losing perspective based on their own perceived levels of commitment. And I think that they feel that gives them a right to do certain things. And I think we've got... That's
so well said, by the way. I just want to stop you because, yeah, the guy whose Twitter handle is Oozalicious thinks that gives him the right to call Thierry Henry a cunt because he was critical of the club on Sky Sports. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's just not quite right. You know, we hold politicians to a high standard. We hold sportsmen to a high standard, and we hold young men. We're holding a 22-year-old kid. I don't want to tell you what I was doing at 22, and it wasn't.
Was it anything like what Tim was talking about earlier? Because it sounds tremendously fun.
One podcast, if I have too many Cronenbergs, I will tell you what I was doing at 22, and I'll tell you now, it wasn't playing in front of 60,000 people being shouted at if you get the last ball wrong after a 60-yard sprint, right? Because that's the life he has to lead, and
for which he's handsomely compensated. Mistakes. I mean, let's not totally flip it around. These guys are paid to handle that, to shoulder that responsibility and that attention.
They are paid to perform. And we can hope they can shoulder the responsibility that their upbringing as a footballer, how they've been built physically, technically, and mentally, allows them to sustain a level of performance and consistency on the football pitch. And when they do, they get rewarded, they get contracts, he got a 6-year contract, the longest contract Arsenal have given out for many years, and he's well paid. And I'll tell you what, if he keeps performing, we should be looking at that contract again at the end of the season. And I know when we look at our comments for this podcast, we're going to get some stick for this, because not a lot of people understand what we have, and I absolutely agree with every word that Tim said. I think we have to recognise what sort of individual we have, or what he could be. And he's 22. When he's 25, what could he be? What could he be as a right back around the rest of Europe? I've said this before. Kyle Walker's 28, and he's still letting in goals at critical moments, letting the ball run under his foot in the FA Cup game and not getting back correctly. Yet he's a £50 million right back, and he's England's #1 right back. Hector Bellerin is 22, and again, I think he's got such development time. The things that have happened to him, I mean, I'm really not interested, if I'm brutally honest. I think Austen Fan TV, it drives so much division, and more than you realise. A lot of people are quite quiet on it, and some people are hugely supportive. I happen to class Robbie as a personal friend since I was 18, and I would never ever say anything negative towards him. He's a top guy. The whole thing has taken off in a way that I never suspected, but I don't link this to Arsenal Fan TV. I link this to fandom. I link this to society and how we treat our heroes and how we hold other people to higher accounts than we hold ourselves. Yeah. I do care about how we engage towards each other as Arsenal fans. I won't be arguing with many fans online. I really try not to. I think you can only set your own example and try to hold your own standards, and then hopefully that will start to get on a lot better. And as a fan group, that's what I care about the most. Yeah, no, well said. And by the way, I mentioned the Twitter account Oozalicious. I'm sure that exists. If there is one and that person is listening, I was making it up as an example, not you specifically, if you exist. I want to unpack what you said just a little bit and put my spin on this. So if people want to hit the fast forward button, now would be the time to do it. So first things first, I think that it is important to distinguish between fans giving their opinion in earnest and fans who are trying to gain celebrity by virtue of supporting Arsenal. And look, we're recording a podcast and we're putting it in the public sphere. In my opinion, by virtue of publishing this and wanting other people to listen to it, we not only invite people to listen, we invite people to criticize, to critique, to have an opinion on it. I would hope, because if they don't have an opinion on it, that means that what we're creating has no meaning or influence on anyone. You look at someone like Howard Stern, and they used to say that the listeners who would listen to Howard Stern the longest were the people who hated him the most and wanted to be outraged by him. And I definitely think for Arsenal Fan TV, for better or for worse, some of the biggest viewers of it and listeners of it and consumers of it are fans of other clubs, right? That want to watch it for the banter, so to speak. And you look at some of the regulars that are on there, and they have created a celebrity status for themselves. And then they want to pound their chest and say that they are super fans, when in fact, what they care most about is the celebrity status. The celebrity status is clearly more important to them than supporting an Arsenal. And by the way, that's totally fine. You have every right to want to become a celebrity, to want to become a YouTube celebrity or an Arsenal Fan TV celebrity. Why would I tell you you can't do that? What I would say is to then be precious about getting a reaction when what you've tried to achieve as celebrity is sort of the opposite. You are trying to be the car crash, and then you're upset when people want to stare at it. And it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And Tim, you said something very interesting, and I'll leave it for you to say because you know the facts and I do not. You know, the one area where I was tempted to sort of come to their defense is to say, well, these are hardcore fans who follow Arsenal home and away, and, you know, so they do have a bit more of a right to throw their toys out of the pram than someone who maybe doesn't make that sacrifice. But the point you made to me is that they actually have only become that since gaining this notoriety. Is that correct?
There is an individual or two for whom that is correct. Yeah, I think basically what the idea we've got to bridge here is that fans as a critical mass are incredibly important. an absolute lifeblood of the club, and you know that so fans as a critical mass are incredibly important. The individual fan is not. Okay, so if I stop going, or if I don't go to a game, or you don't go to a game, or someone else doesn't go to it, guess what? Nobody cares. It makes no fucking difference to anybody whatsoever.
I've boycotted this entire season, haven't gone to a single game, and no one said boo about it.
I didn't go to Östersunds last week. Guess, nobody cared. Nobody should care. It was completely inconsequential to every single person except me. And it's not like the ticket wasn't sold. Someone else went, and I'm sure they had a great time and were freezing cold. It had no impact on the team. It had no impact on anyone. So, when people turn around and say, I paid this and I did that, and it's like, well, yeah, you did, but you don't have to. And I think
you did it for yourself. Let's be clear, Tim. You go to Arsenal and support Arsenal because you love supporting Arsenal, right? You don't do it for Arsenal, right? It's not like this is not a charitable act on your part. You do it because it gives you personal satisfaction. In fact, all of us doing this pod right now, right? We don't do this for compensation. We do it because we enjoy having the chat. So to then turn around and be like, I did all of that. Well, you wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. That's precisely it. I realised a long time ago I don't go, to support the boys because I recognise it makes no difference to them whether I'm there or not, whether, what I do when I'm there. It's like it's all a bit inconsequential to anyone but me, really. But at the same time, yeah, you're right. I go because I enjoy it. I go because and when people say to me at work, like, I don't know, when we've lost or something, they'll be like, oh, I bet you wish you hadn't gone. I'll be like, no, I had a great time. I was fine. I did
you have a drink and a chat and you sing and it's a blast. And by the way, I mean, this is the point, like when people on Twitter are like, can't you just get behind the lads? And I'm like, well, first of all, they wouldn't know if I was or not because I'm fucking in my living room. But secondly, we all create the Arsenal supporting experience that we enjoy. For me, I enjoy analysis. I enjoy moaning occasionally, being a little cynical, having a little fun. I mean, telling the odd, dark humor joke. That's kind of how I like to do it. If that's not your taste, you certainly don't have to follow me, listen to me, or be around me. But we create the Arsenal supporting experience that's enjoyable for us. And
do you know what? And I think there's also like a little bit too much emphasis about what's said on Twitter. It's all inconsequential noise, basically. Someone not incorrectly, kind of pulled me up the other day for because I'd said for ages that Ozil's just stringing us along. He's not going to sign. It's all for the brand and all of that. And I got that totally wrong, and that's and you know what? That's absolutely fine.
Until we find out there's a release clause and he's getting sold in the summer. But sure, apologize now.
But and like I'm not, my issue there isn't that someone pulled me up on it. That's absolutely fine. I was wrong. Delighted I was wrong, and I was wrong. But they were like, kind of being a bit sniffy about it.
Delete
like,
your account,
you were speculating. It's like, yeah, of course I was speculating, and I was wrong. And guess what difference it made? None. It made absolutely none to anybody. Because he signed, and it's as simple as that. So if that shows you anything, that me kind of, having a bit of a snipe, it meant absolutely fuck all because he still signed the contract. All that happened was that I was wrong. It's fine. It's not like it's not the end of the world. It will happen again. It's happened many times before. Happens to every, and I think people kind of think, particularly on social media, that they put like too much, and like you said there, that kind of let's support the lads kind of. It's like, well, the lads aren't on fucking Twitter. Do you know what I mean? Like, most of them don't even have the passwords to their accounts anyway.
It's run by their social media manager, as we know. Who was that famous footballer who like Gundogan, who had like the wrong account post or something?
Because it was meant to be for Ozil or something. Yeah, exactly. And even if you were to assume that they were running their own accounts, which I think some of them have some involvement in that it's not like they're sitting on it like 24/7. And like, obviously we should always call out abuse and stuff like that, and people just being twats and being unreasonable. But like saying, oh, so and so was a bit crap today, or I think we should sell this, but it's totally inconsequential. It's just noise. It doesn't really make any difference to anything.
No.
And I think people are just maybe getting a bit full of our self-importance, because now what we all effectively have is we have our own social media platforms, which are effectively like, that's our way of like editing our image of ourselves and projecting it to the world. And I think we're all perhaps, and I'm certainly not immune to this whatsoever, like just getting a bit big for our boots, really.
Yeah, and look,
about perspective, isn't it? That's the second word.
Yeah.
It's about perspective, and every now and again, I'm not immune to it neither. You can lose perspective. You know, if you catch me at the wrong time, I've had a drink after we lose to Chelsea, then I might be a little bit more upset about something I've read, right? So,
but it's your account, it's your podcast. I mean, this is the thing I think is funny is people who feel that, you know, I've had people accuse me of outcomes in the transfer market, or you know, things like that, because like you were part of the agenda to get him to leave the club or something. And it just, people forget that the reason we tweet the things we do, or say the things we do on a podcast, or write the things we do on a blog, is because we enjoy sharing our opinion. We're not doing it to cultivate some kind of movement.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry, Clive, I cut you off there. Go ahead.
No, that's cool. I think perspective is the key word, right? And for me, it's very important to keep that balance. It really is, and people should try to keep their own balance. I think if we can work harder at that, I think we'll see more of the game, more of each other, more of what's around, and we won't become so singly obsessed with minutiae events. You know, I think there's so much to see and learn if you get your head up and have a look and keep perspective. And you know, I've been through a football journey, and I've been through many games, and games have really upset me and really stayed with me, and I've had to take a step back and then go back and look again, because I felt I was losing perspective on what the club meant to me, and it's meant to be something that enriches your life. It shouldn't take away from your life too much, right? So, and the podcasting angle, to me, and I agree with you, Elliot, is the way to look at the game, the coaching side of the game, the youth development side of the game, and then eventually, you know, sprinkling that with watching Arsenal and different levels of football and different sports, all goes to make my Arsenal watching experience a bit better, right? But that's my journey. I don't expect everyone else to copy it, but hopefully we can copy. Just try to keep perspective, because if we lose it, we're not doing anyone any favors.
Well said. Yeah, and I mean, you know, it's important to remember that when you see someone's Avi pop up on your Twitter timeline, there's a person there. It's not, you know, it's not a company. It's a person just saying what they think. Sometimes it's totally uninformed and stupid, in my case, and Clive and Tim's case. You know, it's usually erudite and well thought out. But, like, you know, it's just people telling you what's on their mind. I mean, that's what this social media thing is. If I was sitting next to you on the couch and made an observation about the game and it was stupid, you'd be like, no, dude, you're wrong. You know, you wouldn't be like, you have an agenda to destroy Olivier Giroud's career at Austen. You know what I mean? So, look, I was planning on us maybe getting to some overarching stuff about the season. I think since we've tipped the hour mark and we don't really have anything pressing to get to, maybe it's best to leave it there. Look, I think the one thing that should probably be said is none of us here are advocating for the kind of abuse and the kinds of things that do go on. You know, racist abuse obviously is a scourge and something that has to be eliminated, and death threats and things like that. It's just an unfortunate part of society, but I don't think this is an Arsenal issue. I think it is a people issue. And I think you would find at any club, in any sport, in any area of social media that happens. So it is what it is. In any event, unless you guys feel a pressing need to stretch this beyond the hour mark, I think this is a pretty good stopping point.
Yep, agreed.
Clive, that work for you?
I'm cool with that, mate.
We don't want to use up all our good material on this podcast. We have a cup final coming up. So here's the way I think this is going to happen. Because we've essentially admitted that we don't think the Östersunds game is that important, barring something obscene happening, there will not be a podcast following that. This will serve as that podcast, and we will then do one following the cup final. Chance to see Aubameyang again, so that's exciting. Chance to beat Manchester City, the best team in England, and hoist another cup, and all good things leading into our return to Premier League action sometime 7 months from now. I think it is kind of hashtag banter, by the way, that like we're not doing well in the Premier League, so we've just stopped playing in that competition. In any event, Tim's on Twitter at Stoberto. Thanks, Tim.
My pleasure.
Clive is on Twitter at ClivePAFC. Clive, as always, a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, unfortunately, Paul couldn't make it today, but we certainly hope to have him back after the Cup final. In any event, give us a 5-star rating. If you want to write nasty things about us on Twitter or in the review, that's totally fine. We acknowledge that that's all a part of it. If you want to write nasty things about Hector Bellerin, you do you. That's how this works. In any event, we will talk to you after the very unlikely Arsenal 10, City 0.